Or now on. All right, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thricening Part Deux. That is the third episode, take 2 of this shit show that we've been trying to do. So, what is it we were going to do? What was the first question?
Well, in reality, this is kind of episode 1 almost.
It is. I mean, they're all going to be episodes. This is all season 0. None of this counts. This is all going to come out in post.
I think we should talk about what it means to be a divergent autist.
Let the guests decide.
Yeah, I kind of feel like they need to figure that out on their own.
Okay. Let the market decide.
I have to show you things.
It's like art. It loses its value when you have to explain it. Art or comedy.
That's right. That's right.
Like a joke, which is what this is.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
It's like it.
Wait, you guys aren't taking this seriously?
No, watch out, Wild's here.
As serious as a heart attack.
Dude, it's politics. How do you take it seriously?
Also a good point.
Yeah.
I take it less seriously when I'm drunk.
Oh, Christ.
And when I'm sober, I feel like it somehow affects me.
Oh, Christ.
And yet, either way, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's why I just drink more.
Same.
Okay, so did everybody actually read through this article, what the left gets right?
Probably not. No one did. I have
No, but I already know my own talking points well enough, so I don't need to read it.
Okay, well, you're the most prepared out of all of us, so why don't you start us off then?
They get nothing right, and they should die. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so, for the most part, for me at least, I think there's probably 3 things they get right. The first would be environmentalist concerns. Now, whether or not you agree with the means they take up to hash out their concerns, it still matters at the end of the day because I kind of grew up with the conviction they don't piss where you eat. And I think, most people can agree with that nowadays, especially because you can do something about it.
Yeah.
Second part is protection for workers. I mean, I've worked in the trades my whole life. So I've seen people get fucked up, man, maimed, lose limbs, horrible stuff. So historically, they've been just about as on board for, protecting the worker as any other fucking political organization. So I got to give it to them there. And, on the third thing, I would have to say some of the social liberal, really the social dimension of their political beliefs. I also agree with, I think you should let people do whatever it is that they like, and you shouldn't really moralize through the law, at least, what they ought to be doing.
Yeah.
So that's just me. Those are the only 3 I think really hold them over.
Those are some of the points they bring up actually in the article. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This is kind of boring. I think we should do a current event.
Yeah, I agree. I just bored myself right there.
I'll give you a current event. When we talk about what the left does right, let's talk about what the left does effectively. And what that is when it comes to manipulating the medias and manipulating public, the kind of the zeitgeist from behind the scene. I think it's far more effective at doing that than it is than the right is, and capturing the heart of the zeitgeist or the culture of the time. And I think we're seeing that.
I'm not sure that that's entirely true anymore because I'm convinced that Trump is just trolling everyone. And he knows how to get them to go rabid over just about anything. But I think some of it is they kind of control academia right now.
Right, exactly.
And that definitely influences the younger generation.
Well, and not just academia, but the medias too. I mean, of course, we know that they have a strong impact on Hollywood and things like that, and of course they've got their own medias like news outlets and things like that as well. But they also have a hand in social media. They're literally behind the scenes impacting Twitter, Facebook, and these different social media platforms, even YouTube itself.
But I think the right is kind of catching up. I heard that who was it? George Bush or someone just made a MySpace.
Recently.
as like a joke.
Onward and upward.
As interesting as it is, though, I've heard plenty of my liberal and progressive friends argue that conservatives are actually the ones in charge of the media. So do you think that, by and large, the media is controlled by conservative side or the liberal side?
I mean,
I don't think it matters. I honestly think that the media itself is the entire thing is force fit behind the imperative of money. It's always about money. It's seldom about the actual convictions of whatever it is they want. I mean, you can look at it this way. News anchors go to different shows. Sometimes it happens, right? So
here we go. Here's the deal. I'm gonna read you a list, and I want you guys to tell me if you think that the name I read to you is liberal or conservative. We'll start with papers because I found that one. All right, USA Today, liberal or conservative?
Liberal.
All right. Okay. The New York Times.
Liberal.
The Wall Street Journal.
Centrist. I'd say centrist.
Anti-YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Times.
Very liberal.
Very liberal.
liberal.
The New York Post.
2 shades past of left cocoa.
The Chicago Tribune.
Liberal.
Yeah, WAPO.
Liberal.
Yeah, aren't they openly liberal? Like they actually.
Yes. Well, so here's my point. The top 7 here, with the exception of the Wall Street Journal, so that's 6 of the top 7, for a grand total of let's see, 2, 4 million, 5 million. Let's see, 6 or 7, about 7 million subscribers, I guess, or 7 million, I guess, people that read, I guess, on average. Those the top 7 out of the top 10 basically are pretty liberal, and that's print media. That's print media. Then we have CNN, liberal, right? You would assume.
Yeah,
absolutely.
MSNBC,
liberal.
CBS,
liberal.
Overwhelmingly liberal.
Yeah.
PBS,
I don't know.
obviously.
Never watched CBS, so.
Okay, guys, we're ignoring the fact that the right has InfoWars, so that just kind of
Yeah, true.
And Fox News.
True.
We've been dislodged.
Well,
but you know what? I think one thing that conservatives definitely have, maybe they don't own it, but it's definitely on their side, is the meme sphere, the meme culture itself. I think it's predominantly to the centrists, the libertarians, and the right.
Well,
I don't think the leftists
because they're
are remotely willing to go into the depths of darkness to pull out these kind of jokes just to have a laugh at the expense of conservatives.
Well, they used to when the conservative religious right was in charge.
Well, sure.
It was
right,
the left.
But it's often the swing of the zeitgeist that dictates who the underlings are going to be and who the subversive groups are going to be.
Well,
we've
I think
done
the
that.
reason for that, though, is that by and large, liberals are intellectually narcissistic, and so they see the whole meme culture as beneath them.
Yeah, I can agree with
I
that.
would agree with that. Yeah.
It's either that or they are obviously aware of the fact that they're never going to win in that sphere.
The whole thing is really problematic.
So late to the race, they're not even running.
I don't think that they view anything as something that they can't win.
Yeah, I agree with that
Could
too.
be right about that.
Although there is a benefit, an advantage to the victim mentality, to thinking that you're losing or that you're the underdog. Because in America, what do we like more than the underdog? That's one of the reasons why Trump was so successful. One of many different reasons, and I think that it's beneficial to any group that's trying to dominate or a situation or to create change, to always paint itself as being the underdog or being discriminated against or being, attacked. We've seen it. I've seen it from people saying the war on Christmas, the war on women, the war on anything. No matter what it is, the war on is like a shorthand for, we're the underdogs and we're fighting an uphill battle. That's why we have to fight so hard, which justifies any kind of extremism that comes out of that particular organization or group.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Yeah, I see a lot of that from the left. So while I do believe that the left has this confidence that it can win, it still seems to perpetually see itself as fighting an uphill battle or constantly not winning. And you see that with the concept of patriarchy or, rape culture, these sweeping large narratives that create a monolithic enemy or, something that needs to be, you have to cast yourself against like a brick wall. Anyway.
It's kind of like you have to make
I agree.
a devil out of something.
Yes.
Basically, or at least that's especially the mentality of politics as it is right now.
Yeah.
I also think they have this point of believing that they live in their ivory cities and that the rest of the country beyond it is the land of barbarians and the most just patently worthless people ever. I also think of that as well because, you see that when it comes to the elections.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they do it openly, though. I don't.
The worst of what they say about working class America comes out just about every time that there's conservatives out in the country voting the opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they believe that they know better than the stupid.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For the rest of us as well. For people that don't live like them.
Yeah.
Well, which is partially why Trump won in the last election is because of all the quote unquote Rust Belt workers voting for him in 2016, right?
All them white people, bro.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, the guy tapped into a vein of, just disenfranchisement that's been around for a long time. It's probably been there for 3 decades.
Identity politics will get you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out when you just call everyone racist all the time, they kind of get annoyed.
They do. When you shit all over someone for long enough, eventually they do things just to spite you. Crazy, right?
That's true.
I would have voted if I only had to pick Hillary or Trump. I would have voted for Trump simply out of spite.
Yeah.
Right.
Call me a racist shitlord, will you? Let's see if your person wins. I'm voting against it.
How much of the percentage of the people that voted at all do you guys think, the ones that voted for Trump at least, voted out of spite? I'd have to say it's probably in the neighborhood of 50%.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty large percentage. Or, at least a sizable one.
Every Democrat in West Virginia that voted for Bernie Sanders, because he took the entire state in the primaries, voted for Trump in the general election.
More than one of those people voted. Yeah, more than one of those people voted for Trump. I bet.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason for that though is because Bernie Sanders was that underdog, right? He was kind of that political outsider, and so the people who voted for Sanders because of his progressive policies, obviously they switched to Hillary. But if you voted for Sanders because you saw him as an underdog, a political outsider, then Trump was your obvious next choice, right?
Yeah. Oh,
sure.
100%. They both appealed to the disenfranchised voters.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I'd say I didn't vote for Trump this time around, and I won't next time. But I do think this is all hilarious.
Yeah,
the way that this is all played out.
Yeah, I agree.
So let me ask you guys this: we're a year into Trump's presidency. Do you think he's done better or worse than you expected?
Surprisingly better.
Surprisingly better than what I expected.
He's doing about what I expected him to do, about as well.
Yeah, I think once you get past all the narratives, like he hates immigrants, he's going to put gays in internment camps, all that crap. It's like, I don't think anything would be that much better with Hillary.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Well, there was an interesting conversation I was hearing. Actually, I was listening to Glenn Beck. I think he brought this up. And he said
there's
that
your problem in that admission right there.
Yeah, everything you're about to say is just false.
Let me
No. I think you guys will actually agree with this. Is that if Trump stopped using Twitter, his poll numbers would jump like 10%.
Jump?
Probably, yeah.
All right. I mean, if he stopped using Twitter, he would definitely stop embarrassing himself. So, like, more rational.
No, I actually think the opposite. I think this is going to be one of those things where you end up loving the bully. You can't. The guy's too funny, and I think the volume of stuff he ends up, giving us is probably what's going to keep him, in charge.
Yeah,
If anything, I think most people are going to appeal to the fact that he produces more memes and, you know, more material for comedians than any other fucking president.
I mean,
he's the Johnny
These
Lawrence.
are like George Bush numbers, you know?
He is poll incarnate. He is politically correct incarnate. They got him elected, or they started this dumpster fire running, and they got him elected. I really think, you know, that maybe he owes them a debt, and he knows that, so he's just giving them more fuel.
It could be it, man.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Rael on this. I think the Twitter thing actually helps him because it's just like, you know, I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows how it's perceived, but he realizes that every time he says something ridiculous, the liberal media is going to jump on it and also make themselves look stupid.
It's the
absolutely right.
He has nothing to lose.
Any press is good press, right?
True.
Yeah, and I think that everybody in America already knows who Trump is by now. So even if he stopped talking, it's not like his image is going to change. People, if anything, people might lose interest because like Lyle was saying, that might be part of his appeal. And
they'll probably try harder to push it. Yeah, they'll start digging back.
Yeah, it's not like if he stopped with all of the tweets that anybody on the left is going to give him a chance. That nobody will. They're going to still treat him like, you know, he's the villain. And everybody on the right either supports him or not with the way he is now. I really don't think that's going to change if his optics change. That looks like we lost Lyle.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
His wife found him out in the car. Drinking a beer. Either that or the cops saw him drinking a beer in the car, and, well, you know how that is.
And he's brown, so that might not work out too well.
Yeah.
He'd been better off streaming that.
Probably should have said our final goodbyes.
That poor brown motherfucker. So Oprah. So today's episode, by the way, our sponsor is hashtag Oprah Fuhrer 2020, because Oprah 2020, guys, right?
Well, like I said, she publicly stated that she's not interested, right?
I don't care. She'll trounce Trump even if she doesn't run. Someone will put her name on a piece of paper, and
that would be an interesting 2020 Oprah versus The Rock.
For on the Democratic ticket to try and get the main nomination.
Well, actually, I don't know. Apparently, The Rock is actually a Republican.
Oh, is he trying to unseat? Oh, if he's trying to unseat Trump, that's even more interesting.
Wow, I did not see that coming.
I don't know if I think he's technically independent, but from what I hear, he leans more conservative than liberal.
I mean, him and Trump could just settle it in the WWE ring, right?
It actually doesn't surprise me for some reason. I don't know what it is. Just like his personality, he seems like he would lean a little more to the right.
Because he's level-headed.
Yeah, maybe.
I can see that.
He's very by the book, by the rules, paint by the numbers most of the time.
Maybe it's because he hasn't been a total jackass in Hollywood and had that smug, like, I can tell the peasants what to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd like to see a Rock John Cena ticket. I'm down with that.
Well, if it's a John Cena ticket, would you actually see it?
Hey, I was just about to make that joke. You got me.
Yeah, I would.
All your signs in your yard say Rock and 2020, and it's just a blank spot. And if I had a fucking soundboard, I could put it on here. Da, 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 and his name is John Cena.
Highlight of the stream right there.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm on soundboard. Don't worry. Eventually, I think I'll do a greatest hits, and I'm going to edit out some of the best clips and put them into one episode and make a best of. But until that day, when we're actually good,
wouldn't that be funny? After one episode, we make a best of clips.
Just repost the episode.
Just name every episode best of, because it's gonna be the best of. We really can't get much worse.
Are you saying we plateaued?
We didn't even go anywhere. Just a plane. We're just in a plane of existence.
Okay, so first, I think we should do a drunk stream, and then we should do our D&D group live, and then we should do a drunk D&D, stream.
I'll be honest with you. The old Neverwinter Nights engine, very low impact. If everybody got it, we could do a Twitch stream of Neverwinter Nights while drunk.
I'd be down for that.
Just saying.
That'd be
Would be fantastic.
I'd even buy some alcohol and drink for it.
Holy shit.
If you roll a 1, you take a shot.
That works for me because it does all the rolling automatically, so you don't need to use dice. We'll be drinking a lot. We'll turn the rules to hardcore and use the loaded 20-sided dice. All right, let's see here.
So do you guys think that Trump will win re-election, though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Unless the Democrats pull out some crazy shit. Trump is not there.
It depends who's running, but I would say probably he's.
If they run John Kerry, he will win. If they run Bernie Sanders, he will win. If they run Hillary Clinton, I will shoot myself in the face, and Trump will win.
God, could you imagine if them running Hillary Clinton again? And I wouldn't put it past them, honestly.
I wouldn't put it past them either.
That would be third or fourth time, right?
That'd be it.
I don't think Bernie Sanders would win. Honestly, I think a lot of the younger folks like him, but not so much like the baby boomers and all them. And plus, he has so many like high school fans. Like, half his following can't vote.
Yeah, he's done. They
can't
done.
now, but they will be able to when he runs again. The biggest problem I would have would be his age, but at the same time, Trump is only like 4 or 5 years younger than him.
That's a whole term.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, they're pretty close. Hillary is up there too. She was around their age.
Maybe we should stop electing old people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, right?
These people need to accept the fact that their time has come and gone. Like, I get it that you're older, you can still do things into old age, but you're just not a good reflection of A, where the country's going, and B, what you're not like you don't have a lot of peers, Yeah.
Well, the way to do that is to institute a lot stricter term limits.
Well, or lower a lot of these ages. I mean, you can't become president until you're what, 35, 40?
35.
Yeah, 35. Yeah. And so like it's like you can't. It's not like back when these rules were instituted that people weren't living that long, but you had to actually live that long to accrue some sort of experience, guaranteed. Because I guess you could live 35 years and only accrue enough experience to run the fucking presidency. But nowadays, you have people that are 50 who are as ignorant as a 6-year-old child, and you have people who are 18 that, God bless them, they have done their fucking research and they know a lot of shit. They may not have real world experience, but they have knowledge. And at least they're
I don't think it matters because we don't elect people based on actual research and knowledge.
And that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. You have arbitrary cutoff points, or you have arbitrary minimum ages, and at that point it's like, okay, well, you're already entrenched in the system by the time you get to that point. So if you're not already entrenched in the system, you have no shot. Like, if politics wanted to be more inclusive and better representative in our representative government, it would probably need to include more people that are of the age where they can talk and discuss, which would be teens. I would say teenagers and on up, you should be able to participate in government. I mean, New Hampshire has a couple state reps that are, I think, 18 and 19, and several that are in their 20s.
How's that working out for them?
Actually, New Hampshire's pretty good because they have like 400 state reps, and so each state rep represents, on average, like between like 3,000 and 5,000 people on average, I guess.
Well, that's not a bad distribution, though.
No, it's the largest citizen legislature in the country, I think. And it's definitely the one that's held the most accountable because people actually like know you. They know who their state reps are a lot of the time, and they're not afraid to call them out because it's like it's someone that's more accessible. It's not some politician who's been in politics for all this time and they're like a celebrity to you. They're like the aristocracy that you don't know that you look up to them.
So they're not afraid to yell at you, pretty much.
Oh God, dude, we rail our state reps all the time in New Hampshire. Like they get into shouting matches half the time, which is hilarious because they'll call each other out, and then everyone's just like, "Yeah, fuck that guy."
Well, I mean that works for a smaller state, but out here,
What do you do when that's in Texas? Yeah,
yeah,
or California.
Because I think out in California, our reps, it's like 1 rep per 130,000 or something almost.
Yeah, what's your state population again? Like 30 million?
Too much.
Something like that, yeah.
Ridiculous. It's obscene.
Out in California.
Yeah.
Ours is 25.
That's why there's like 3 or 4 different secessionist movements out here in California to split it up.
Do it. Cut it down.
Just under 40 million.
How much is it?
Just under 40. It's 39.25 million.
So
Oh, wow.
You gotta be kidding me, dude.
The population of California is roughly like 35 times that of New Hampshire.
Texas has 22 million.
22. Wow.
True. Well, for New Hampshire, it's a small place, so going by the numbers of people, that's one thing. And in a place like that, I feel like you could do geographical regions.
Oh,
smaller
shit.
ones.
If I'm reading this correctly, this is saying that Canada has a population of 36 million, which means the state of California has more people in it than Canada.
That makes sense.
Wow.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
Canada's
do
fucking
you,
empty.
Troy, do you ever run
fucking
into
itself.
any of the Free State Project people?
Oh, let me tell you a story about how I'm a member of the Free State Project.
I was wondering that.
Nice.
Whenever
I love
you said
story
New
time.
Hampshire, I was like, I bet he is.
So I moved to New Hampshire, found out about the Free State Project, and I was like, holy shit, if I had known about this, I would have come sooner. So I became I was a post-mover Free Stater. And so that was fun. And so I was hanging out with a lot of Free Staters. The movement's kind of died down now, but the libertarians have settled into their regions, and they all do their crazy libertarian thing. Fun. And there's more than just libertarians, obviously. There's like left libertarians and fucking Republicans, conservatives, all kinds of people, Democrats. But that's another story for another episode.
That does sound like a lot of fun, though. It's
The reason
like,
they chose New Hampshire versus Montana, if I remember correctly, is because they had a small enough population and an effective enough legislature to actually do things. So, I mean, if you get 30 or 40 people into the legislature in New Hampshire, which is fairly simple, then you have a real platform to affect change. Like that's enough people in that legislature to affect change. Like how many people? I mean, how easy is it to get elected to any one district in California? Probably not super easy unless you have a shit ton of cash or recognition.
Right.
In New Hampshire, you can run a campaign to get elected to the state House of Representatives for under $500 and win.
Look at that sexy man.
Is that Robert?
Looks like we have some. Yeah, looks like we have someone joining us here.
Oh my
Hey.
God. There he is.
let's get this sausage fest going.
Oh, shit. Look at his profile picture. I'm gonna just hang on a second. Put that up there for everyone to see.
That's majestic as fuck.
Oh my God! Look at him. Look at that chin. Fuck that jawline. God
It's like an
damn.
episode of Eden right
Hey,
here.
He was a stallion in a past life.
You guys hear this?
Yeah, it was about like 5 days after I was married. Ended up I'm pretty sure I was still hungover and was told to just pose for a picture, and I was like, this.
Listen to that voice, too. My panties are already wet.
Oh dear. But hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I have to say that so far, I think Robert and Troy have the best radio voices out of everyone.
Woohoo.
Easily.
That's why I think we should get Frank in here.
It's a major point of jealousy for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
I agree.
Well, you have the brownest
Really?
skin, so
Yeah, I would train some brown points for radio voice for sure.
I'll teach you, my son. I'll teach you.
Be good.
WAEL radio.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well played.
Indeed. Well, now that we got you in here.
Uh-oh. I feel like I just walked into an ambush.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Just a sausage fest.
Yeah, just a we're still.
Sausage ambush. Even better.
You walk into the room and immediately you're assaulted by wieners.
Yeah, you're just smacking the face.
Robert,
Yep,
try
sounds
and hang
like
tight.
Friday.
Jeff Coco will be here soon enough.
I wish we could get his leathery bare ass in here. Woof.
Oh my God! Can you imagine what their apartment smells like?
Oh.
Lubrication and farts.
It's gotta be, man.
Actually, no.
I'm willing to
I would
throw in
imagine-
cat shit in there.
I'm gonna go ahead and say honestly, I believe his apartment probably smells very floral.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It
I
would
wouldn't be
probably
surprised either.
like Nathan Lane.
Like flower farts.
Nathan Lane in the birdcage. Nathan Lane and Robin Williams in the birdcage. That's what I imagine Jeff Coco's apartment to be like, but with more leather, more leather. than that.
I won't deny probably scent of leather in there, but I seem to recall he's also a bit of a gearhead or something, likes working on cars, so...
Yeah, which is the weirdest thing ever.
Wait.
So
You
Can you imagine when he's...
gay men
Can you imagine when he's asking you for a 10 millimeter? You're not sure which one to pull out.
Oh, fuck's sake, man! Stop.
Oh, no.
He's bent over the hood of the car with his assless chaps.
Oh, right.
Oh, shit.
Hand me that 10 millimeter, Will.
Oh man, he's working on a motor with the assless chaps. That is an image I could do
I'll
without.
give you something to wax, boy.
Get in there deep. I need you to grab that nut.
Get in there past your elbow, boy.
Oh no.
All right, question. Activities that you should not do naked.
Be at Jeff Coco's house.
Yeah. Agree.
Well, I was going to say I can't think of one, and then you came up with that.
Now that we have
Golf
everyone here,
lessons.
and Scott Carson can I think has already answered this question last night on our other test stream. What is everyone? You want to do the favorite president thing, or do we have another question, Scott Carson?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, we can ask that here.
That's good.
Because that got us into a heated debate last night about why Calvin Coolidge is the best president ever.
Because he's so cool.
Oh, nice.
I'm sorry. I'll go kill myself.
You've earned yourself a mute, son.
So I maybe be the only person here that agrees it's Eisenhower.
Why is that?
Eisenhower.
Well, Eisenhower, man, was a fucking badass. First of all,
Yeah, he does have the whole military general thing going for him.
That is
seriously.
I think it was FDR because he managed to be everything that the left hates while being idolized.
Being a conservative.
Okay.
Wait,
I never thought of it that way. Putting people in camps, discriminating against different races.
Oh yeah.
Basically, fascist, I guess. He was literally
everyone's
Hitler.
Gold. You know.
He was polio.
Those were
Hitler.
tough times.
Well,
Extended
I brought
the
this
Great
up last
Depression.
night, but I mean, Woodrow Wilson is the same thing. He's usually consistently idolized, and yet he resegregated the government and the military, and he was a complete racist.
Yeah.
In a time when even the Nazi army was integrated. That son of a bitch. Well, I guess it wasn't the Nazi army at that time, but.
All right,
But
who's next? Favorite president?
else. I was gonna say Jackson because fuck Banks.
That's straightforward.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something about Elizabeth Warren.
Who, Pocahontas?
He wasn't a fan of Native Americans.
Fuck Indians too. Actually, I mean, I've read that he actually prosecuted illegal land purchases from Native Americans. But I mean, I don't know. I've ever seen the actual that. But it was said that he actually did prosecute several farmers that illegally purchased land, basically, I guess, scammed Native Americans out of their land to expand their farms.
Huh.
And it was a combination of him and Congress that shat on Indians at the time. So I don't think he can't take the full blame for shitting on natives. But he did say fuck the banks, and I like that. I like that about him.
And he's
Are you willing to trade the point about the natives for the banks?
What's that?
I said
I will concede.
I don't know who's
I will
talking right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was answering that question. I didn't realize. All right. Okay. Here we go. I will make my answer, and then you will respond. Okay. Andrew Jackson. Fuck banks. Fuck Indians too. Go ahead.
Have you guys actually been on a reservation before?
Yes.
It's pretty fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, they are pretty fucking crazy. They're pretty cool people until you piss them off.
Yeah, they are.
Well, isn't it like they have their own sort of like law enforcement over there as well, to where it's like there's not a lot of overlap? I mean, but
it's kind of crazy, man. Like when the cops on average are more drunk than the criminals there, it makes it pretty hard to police. Swear to God, dude, it's like Trailer Park Boys in that whole entire reservation.
This is actually only racism / bigotry I don't quite feel comfortable with.
Well, I'm brown, so I can say whatever the fuck I want.
Well, you're Armenian, so you get a free pass on other people's fucking oppression.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, see, it pays to have a genocide in your people's past.
Well, I got two, so it's even better.
Yeah, some people get their own country.
Yeah, we didn't get that.
It's okay.
Yeah,
you guys near everyone else's.
Yeah, it's not fair that Wales had his own genocide. Like, why don't we check your privilege, Whale? Your genocide privilege, I suppose.
That sucks, man.
Hey, YL, why does your mom let you have 2 genocides and we only get 1?
It's because I'm better than you, bro.
That's right. Well, I guess when you're dealing with the Turks, really, you just can't win.
No, you can't, dude. I had a genocide on the Greek side, well, a small one at least, and a big one on the Armenian side. In a Darwinian sense, the Turks whooped their asses, dude.
Well, when you're the Zerg.
Yeah, that's true.
Until you meet the Poles. Those fucking Turks, man, they just couldn't get past the Poles.
You know what? I kind of have this idea that, like, there's these areas in the world that are always going to be toxic no matter what you do. You know, kind of like the former Yugoslavia. It's just never going to get better. Even though they've separated into other countries, man, this shit is brewing beneath the surface. It's kind of the same thing, you know, with like Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia.
I wouldn't say never going to get better, but there is no systematic solution for that kind of thing. No matter how much you separate states or try to legislate anything, it's not going to fix those deeply rooted cultural, historical problems.
You know, I don't know.
I mean, some of these blood feuds are like 300 years old, man. It's pretty wild.
You know, you study the history of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
It's my belief that if World War I had not happened, that they would have successfully done something about like integrating the different ethnicities that were within their empire. Because I forget who was the emperor of the empire at that time, but he had this plan to like federalize different districts so that you could vote along regional lines and stuff. It was actually very interesting.
Hey, you know what? That's actually like really similar to what was going to happen in the Soviet Union right after the Alexander Kerensky had basically created the provisional government, which got taken over by the Bolshevik Party. It was kind of the same thing. I mean, the guy was headed in this like federalism kind of a, you know, coin toss between the different peoples because he realized that there were differences that you couldn't mend over with trade or anything like that. They weren't interested in getting along.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You know, and the Soviet Union's very diverse, man. I mean, kind of sad how it turned out.
I actually think that's one way where we tend to view Eastern culture through Western eyes. Like we don't so much have a concept of that kind of long-lasting blood feud where like countries in the Middle East, like Egypt, Israel, you know, all of that kind of conflict, they're not really interested in getting along, like you said.
As a regional place, we've only existed for what 400 years now. 500 years as a region, and for most of that time we've been culturally homogenous to a point where, you know, the one culture that was in charge was basically the same culture.
Yeah, I think the Middle East is very difficult to actually get a working theory to fit over, like, flawlessly. It's just not going to happen. I think it's so complex there that, you know, you have like different, not just different countries and not just different people and not just different religions, but you have completely different languages in a lot of cases. And that's like what starts a lot of the shit in the first place, man, is just people not, you know, not being able to get these fucking trade agreements going because they're bickering and bitching about the smallest points. And unbelievable. I mean, the greatest example of this, I think, is if you look at Egypt, man. It's such a corrupt country. And this has a lot to do with people not willing to take up a common language, take up a fucking common, system of merit. Corruption everywhere. You know, the two major cities in that country get basically all the money, and the rural parts of the country, which are very diverse, get nothing.
I think it really does put into perspective, though, that America is probably one of the most accepting nations. We still have our problems, but it's nothing compared to what happens with when you put different cultures together in other areas of the world.
I think that's a good. But I guess one of the questions that all leads back to is, you know, how do you enforce that sort of homogeneous mix that needs to be created? Then, if we're going, you know, if the problem ends up being this corruption and ends up being perpetuated by, you know, all these like conflicting cultures and conflicting ideologies, how do you? What?
Ethno state. Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, that's a great point, Robert. That's kind of the Israel project, I would say, in a nutshell, because, you know, Israel is a country that's governed by the common sphere of law. That's the universal there, and they have to have enforced it, that homogeny, through that lens with force. And it really sucks to look at, but when you look at the end of the day, everyone has pretty good representation in Israel. You know, there's Arab Muslims that serve in some of the better parts of government. You know, there's women there that are serving. There's different minority groups there that also have a voice. It's not... when you have that many differing things, you have to take into account that force is going to be necessary at some level. I mean, go look at the history of the world and try to find me an example where that's not true. Tough sale.
Tough sale.
I think it's not necessarily an issue of enforcement either. One of the problems that you run into is when you try to do these quick fixes is that there is going to be backlash. Whereas if you slowly integrate ideas into society through education, through the arts, through different projects like that, you can slowly change the mentality of a culture. And sure, it's not going to be as satisfying because you don't get that quick fix. But you create lasting change as opposed to a quick fix, which is going to get a lot of backlash and maybe even ethnic violence.
I think you can legislate a system to some extent that keeps people from killing each other, but it's not going to fix the actual conflict. That has to come kind of from the bottom up, I think. And there, like you said, there's no quick fix to that. That's going to take decades.
It's a generational fix,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you look at, America's behavior towards countries it bombs the shit out of, in older times, we actually hung around for quite a while and rebuilt those countries and kept our resources there for several decades. And that just wasn't the case. It wasn't the same thing in Iraq as it was in Germany or as it was in Japan. You didn't have us taking the same kind of exit care that was needed.
Well,
it's almost entirely the case, like with the lootings and the power vacuum and all that stuff. That's just the case of them not wanting to stay there for 20 years. And unfortunately, the anti-war movement is kind of what facilitated that, or actually created the conditions where that was the inevitable result. and it's an unexpected consequence, right? But it kind of worked that way. Sucks to say, but
I think it was expected and unexpected in a way, where like we ended up in this bad situation where the people who were the anti-war movement were largely the people who were like, we shouldn't have been there in the first place. But after a certain point, it ended up becoming more of like, all right, well, we're already there, and now we have to commit past a certain point, or we're gonna, I don't know, create ISIS or something.
We've got to fix the mess. We've got to fix the mess we created at the very least, right? By going in.
Well, who was it?
Right.
Who's that gay? Who's the gay historian from Britain? The one that always argues
That
with
narrows it down.
feminist Penny. I don't know. I forget his name off the top of my head, but I remember seeing him on an episode of Question Time, and he goes, "You cannot liberate people because they're always going to resent you if you liberate them, and then you always are going to have to pick up the slack. People have to liberate themselves. Like, you can help them liberate themselves, I guess. Like, you can give them the tools they need, but if you go in and you liberate a people, they're going to either resent you or they're going to just take advantage of it. So, I mean, which we see in a lot of Middle Eastern countries, especially ones we stay in, and we saw it in Vietnam too. They just
right. But think about a more confusing scenario where the colonial power system of the British Empire, when it got to India, broke down a very antiquated and quite brutal and barbarous kind of caste system, which had already just completely was doing the same thing that their empire was doing all over the world, but it was doing it to its own citizens. How do you weigh the moral calculus, so to speak, about something like that? It's not easy to pin down as saying which one was worse or better. In a lot of ways, India has gained far more than its neighbors from empire than it actually spent as being part of it. It was already losing in the first place with the caste system. So it's, the history is convoluted, and I'm not an expert in Indian history, but
I mean, do you think if the British Empire hadn't taken over India, if they'd be shitting in the streets today?
I think far more of them would be, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there would be more street shitting and more rivers full of trash if they hadn't had that taste of Western culture and then had basically the framework not ripped away, but quickly given away before they could kind of pick up that slack? I don't know. I feel like
it democratized the caste system where everybody could get a piece of the pie. It widened the hierarchy that's in the society, because before that there was just a very small number of people, which was a family or something kind of like a dynasty, you could say, and that's what controlled everything by birth. It's not by you can get into it by merit or any other sort of social mobility factor where you can move through society.
Yeah, that worked for them.
That
worked for them. It may not have worked for us at the same speed that we wanted it to work at, but it was working for them. I mean, if their society hadn't collapsed and wasn't on the brink of collapse, there's no telling if colonialism helped or hurt them. And to be honest with you, I think it's like a wild animal or an animal. You take an animal out of its habitat, you bring it in, you put it under your rigid society, your culture, and then you try and turn that animal loose without slowly acclimating it to being back in the wild. It's gonna fucking starve to death, or it's gonna go and fucking ruin the environment you put it into. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, look at Great Britain, right? They still have their hereditary monarchy, and it's a part of their cultural identity. I mean, they still have democratic systems, but by and large, there's no desire to get rid of that hereditary monarchy.
And if someone did, what would England be the same? Less successful? Maybe it wouldn't really necessarily impact the success of the country.
It would definitely change the culture, though.
It would definitely change the culture. Yeah, the culture would take a huge hit.
I also think it lose part of its pulse as just a historical country. It's been defined by those things for a very, very long time, and that even the symbolic wealth of, like the Queen doesn't really have political power, right? But she's there. That's very important to people. It's kind of the same thing in Jordan, because, I'm not an Arab by any means, but, I was born there, and I did quite a fair search, bit of searching about how the government works there. It's the same thing. They have a king and a queen, but At the end of the day, there's several small families that kind of own the show. It's kind of an oligarchy, but mostly like a stable authoritarian theocracy. It looks progressive. Quite on the outside, looks very progressive. But once you dig in, it's got its problems, like really bad.
I was going to try to bring up Japan as a counterexample, but the more I think about it, the more I don't know if they still have any sort of like emperor or also.
They still have an emperor, yeah.
Okay, well then, fuck me.
Same as the queen kind of thing. It's just he's a figurehead, but doesn't actually have a whole lot of political power.
In fact, I'd argue he has even less political power than the British Queen does.
Yeah, technically.
But what's interesting with Japanese history is that I don't know if this is true from a historical standpoint, but as far as the cultural mythos goes, it's only been the same imperial family that's ruled them throughout their entire history. There wasn't any dynastic change.
Wow. So completely different than China or anywhere else.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I can't. I'm going to go ahead and open and say there's a fairly popular YouTube video called like a 10-minute history of Japan or something.
Oh yeah.
The guy. I mean, the way the guy says it is that there have been several changes in the bloodline of the control of Japan, and even different class changes, like from emperors to shoguns, from shoguns back to an emperor. They switched the city. There's like an
They own like the rice fields and all that stuff, and it was basically about who could, produce the most wealth.
Right.
Yeah,
so
like,
it had something to do with that.
With the shoguns, though, what happened is that you have these shoguns, which are basically regional warlords that would rise to power, and you'd still have the emperor. But the emperor had no power. The power was with all the shoguns, but because of the cultural significance of the emperor, the shoguns realized how important it was to keep that emperor sitting on his throne. So it's kind of like, the Pope in the 40s, how he was stuck in the Vatican and everything. He had no real power, but he was an important cultural symbol, so they're like, oh yeah, sure, he can stay.
Stuck in the Vatican. I'm surrounded by Nazis and I can't get out.
So were several children, from what I remember.
What's that?
I said so were several children, from what I remember.
Which explains why it could be a new R. Kelly single, "Stuck in the Vatican."
Wow.
Oh my God! Are we talking about Cameron's Parish, guys?
Oh man!
I thought we were talking about Cameron.
No, code names.
Saint Cuckold.
Saint Cucks. Saint Cockblow.
Oh boy.
Well, that devolved.
Way off the back.
I like that fluctuation, though.
Yeah. It's nice to go from honestly discussing balkanization of different regions of the world to making Pope jokes about pedophilia.
Verbally shitposting.
Yeah.
It's a good gradient.
Yup. The way it is. Oh God.
So back to the best president thing. Washington Post ranks Lincoln as being the best president.
They would, that fucking fascist cunt.
Yeah. So does CBS.
Oh boy.
They just, that's virtue signaling is what that is. He's the one that quote unquote freed the black slaves, which, and as a New Hampshire resident, let me tell you, Franklin Pierce is the one that did all the work trying to bring everyone together before he got shit on by Buchanan and then fucking Lincoln. No one cares about Franklin Pierce. They say he's the worst president because he was just, he got shit on. So Lincoln can fuck off, and so can Buchanan.
Lincoln can fuck up.
I'm a big fan of Jefferson.
So I will give Lincoln this. I will give Lincoln this. He did try to stick it to the central banking and print gold-backed U.S. dollars, and for that, I believe they killed him. And I guess what goes around comes around, I suppose.
Well, here's the thing about Lincoln is that he had no actual stake in the game of freeing the blacks from slavery. He's quoted as saying, if I could keep the United States together by freeing the blacks, I'll do it. If I could keep the United States together by keeping them in slavery, I'd do it.
Well, he only freed them in states he didn't legally control, as far as those states recognized his control. So
Right.
It makes sense. Not I mean, some of the states in the North, in the Union, remaining in the Union, had already abolished slavery, but he didn't actually abolish slavery in those states. He wanted to give them autonomy, but the states that had already seceded, he was just like, well, I'll show you.
Yeah, it was personal.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
But the other thing is that, from my memory, the Emancipation Proclamation itself wasn't really worth its salt. It just basically, essentially threw these people out on the street. And then what were they going to do? They're going to go up north and compete for factory jobs with the Hungarians and the fucking Poles. It wasn't going to happen. So you just included them in the economy that didn't have any. There was no labor shortage at the time.
That to Mike's credit, was already shitting on the Irish. The Irish were
absolutely. You already had your freaking.
South.
You already had people having these awful factory jobs up north that, man, were horrible. I mean, it was just they couldn't leave.
You ever see the movie Gangs of New York?
Oh my God, yes, I reference that all the time.
Right, it's an
when
amazing
anyone
movie.
gives me any bullshit, I'm just like, Gangs of New York. Go watch that, then come talk to
I
me.
still haven't seen it yet. I've been meaning to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I haven't either.
It's a worthwhile watch.
Yeah, you know what? We're gonna do that. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna watch it, and we're gonna do like a Mystery Science Theater. It's gonna be like mystery autism. It'll be a mystery autism theater, and we'll just sit and watch it. I'll put it up on the Hangout, and we'll watch it and make comments and pause it, and basically do a live review, a running review of it.
I'm downs.
That sounds good to me.
Anytime Cameron Diaz goes to talk in her terrible accent, though, just like someone narrate over it. God, no, don't take a shot. Everyone be dead by the end of the movie.
I guess there are worse fates. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, thank God.
Go on about Gangs of New York. You were right.
Yeah, so it's basically a look at the Irish condition during the Civil War, and actually what's going on in the city of New York while the Civil War is going on. There's actually rebellions and stuff about the forced draft and everything. It's a fascinating watch.
It talks about the bosses too.
Oh yeah, bosses, and really how the Irish at the time had no voting or political power whatsoever.
Well, that's not true. They voted. Several of them voted several times in election.
Well, they did, but they usually
as they were told to vote. But sure,
right.
They gave him a haircut and sent him down to the voting booths several times in a row.
Fucking haircut.
It may be a little embellished, but that is a line out of the movie where the enforcers basically for the boss of New York, or the boss of the little borough, he goes. The one guy comes back and goes, "Did you vote today?" And I believe the guy goes, "Yeah, I've already been twice." And he grabs him and tosses him to another guy and says, "Give him a haircut and send him down again." And at one point they count the votes and they're like, "You got like 3,000 more votes than there are people in the cities." Like, well, that's fine. I don't care. At least I won, or something like that. So it's like it touches on that level of corruption and the sort of the plight of the Irishmen of the North.
Yeah.
Shit, guys, we can't take shots and die because then we might vote Democrat.
Oh no, that's a good point. I'm off the grid. I'm kind of off the grid, so I don't know if they'll find me.
They don't need to. You're dead.
That's true. It's true. They just use my name and number. Fuck it. Whatever.
That's all good, dude. They probably use that fucking movie as an instruction manual.
You shave him and send him back down.
I was trying to remember the name. Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall. Those are
Tammany Hall. Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall.
Oh, yeah.
That's I'm over here silent like, right? God, what the fuck was the name of that place? Like,
God damn it. What are you going to do?
I mean...
But yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. But going back to the point is...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was going to say, going back to the point of Lincoln being shitty president, you take over from here.
Oh, I was just going to say, with a name like Tweed, you have to be a boss, right?
Hello.
Or he just created a bunch of amps.
Oh, Christ. Oh, Christ. Please no.
Holy cow.
No more.
So, of the list of things that we decided to talk about, we still haven't talked about the second one, creating echo chambers of technology and social media. You guys want to touch on that?
Yes,
Absolutely. Let me
Shit.
tell you why I'm right all the time.
We're
First of all,
are we?
We're gonna need our resident expert on echo chambers, Mike, to get in here.
He's not self-aware enough to comment.
That's true. That's true. Poor
Well,
bastard.
so we can use that to our advantage and get him to comment without realizing that he's commenting.
nah, dude, you're talking about a guy who probably reviews his own blog. It's hopeless.
No, he issues death threats to himself.
Just to get the attention at the office.
Yeah. I don't think it's
It's like
actually that uncommon.
No, I don't think it's that uncommon
In the
either. In all
media.
honesty, I think
Like,
it's
you know,
a
what if I
very
got
effective
some-
Let me tell you
strategy.
guys a story. Let me tell you guys a story. There's this gal I knew in college. We left for winter break and read over Facebook that she died of a heart attack. Okay?
Oh.
I show up the next semester. There she is in class. Okay? And
What?
she came up with this whole story about how it was like a cousin or ex-boyfriend or something like that hacked into her account and told people that she was dead. Now, I'm calling BS on that because her Instagram was active like an hour or two after the whole "oh, she's dead" thing. Like she's liking different pictures and stuff.
Okay. Well,
So-
maybe she didn't. Did she know right away?
Well, you never know, dude. If her cell phone was in her pocket and she was in rigor mortis, she could have been clicking all sorts of buttons, dude. You have no idea.
He actually could have been the second coming of Christ and then died and rose again.
But
Not
It could have
Instagram,
been any of these.
it would have taken
No.
3 days for Instagram to start being active again.
No, not with this gal. She's definitely not the second coming of Christ.
Okay.
I do
No,
random
seriously,
acts
though.
of-
All that to say,
Okay.
you know, the cry for help thing is definitely, or cry for attention rather, is definitely a real thing.
True. I
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
cry for
Well, it's not even just that. You can take it even further. I actually believe that a lot of political figures and figureheads use things like death threats as a means to legitimize their positions and also to shut down opposition. You can actually
Right.
bolster an actual political clout through victimhood. And those kinds of things. It's like we're looking at the Channel 4 thing. We were talking about this yesterday, how I would not in the least bit be surprised if Channel 4 is blowing out of proportion any kind of harassment or attacks or whatever verbal online attacks that journalists received as a means of just simply redirecting the narrative. It's no longer that she was blatantly arguing strawmen and, you know, using some crappy tactics. Now it's, well, she's a victim because, you know, Peterson's followers went after her. And to take it further, Peterson himself has commented against that, saying, all right, let's not, you know, don't do this, don't go after her, use your words, don't be an idiot. But by doing that, other people are still saying, see, he needed to do that to get his followers to stop doing this. It's like a form of legitimizing that narrative. And I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if this is done intentionally. I mean, it doesn't take.
It's a rat maze.
Right.
She literally set up a rat maze where no matter where he goes, he looks guilty.
Right. Exactly.
You know, you can't get out of it because he has to make a public response about the point of telling. Even he didn't know. There was no way of even knowing if
Right.
somebody had actually even said anything. There would have been no evidence
I'm not sure
cited
that
that
he
Deux
does
came out.
have to make a public response. Maybe like Jack, that video that you shared, I think it made a good point that maybe the best thing for him to do would have been to just completely ignore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it just fades away. People have very short attention spans now.
Yeah. It was Tim Pool. He made that comment, and I agree. I actually think that would have been the better approach for him, because then he's not even legitimizing it. And it's also worth noting, to the best of my knowledge, they still haven't even released any kind of evidence that such a thing even occurred. And of course, we don't want to assume bad faith per se, but it's kind of hard to not assume bad faith when you watched a 30-minute interview that was dripping with bad faith. I mean,
Right. And the
it's,
point originally is that she lost the interview, and that was the most insufferable fact at the time. So they had to create this counter narrative that she was actually receiving these obvious death threats, which again, there's been nothing to substantiate that they even took place. But even the accusation alone nowadays calls for someone to make a public statement and say, I completely don't want this to happen, blah, 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 blah. But that also makes you complicit. You look guilty anyways.
Yeah, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in that regard, because other people can say, well, you're not calling it out. You're not calling out the bullying or harassment. You know,
right. So they can always say he's ignoring it.
They'll even call it out, but they'll say, you're not calling it out enough.
Right.
You know.
Now, while something you said, though, it reminded me, isn't it sad that we're considering it's supposed to be a news interview, and we're saying it's like, oh, he won the interview or she lost the interview. It's like that shouldn't be the point of journalism, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I mean, the point is that when you have a interviewer treating the interviewee as if this were a formal debate in a university setting, right?
Right.
She's the one that set that up. Yeah. Constantly misrepresenting you, it begins to feel like a trial rather than even a debate. So she went so far as to go in that direction, and he left it as a debate. But he also said from the get-go, I'm not going to entertain this in the context that you want this to exist in. I won't play it, because that way he just stayed kind of away from. That's why he didn't answer to any of the mischaracterizations. Didn't play, didn't try to defend, didn't try to deflect.
He really did a good job of staying calm and collected and respectful, despite how disrespectful she was being to him.
I agree.
For sure.
Now, I've heard
I think that there's
commentaries on the interview, and Jordan Peterson himself admits this, that the only thing he actually kind of regrets about it is when he said, gotcha.
Right. Yeah. He wanted to actually have a moment with her and say, let's have a conversation about the issues as people, rather than me dealing with your persona, which is all I've been experiencing from you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the gotcha just came off as a little condescending, which could have maybe induced a feeling of humiliation in her, which only increases antagonism, right?
I mean, she kind of deserved
doesn't look good no matter what.
Productive.
Could have been a teachable moment.
Absolutely. And I would say that even what she was doing is what she should be doing if she were doing it in good faith, and she was actually trying to challenge his views and actually, be challenging to him. That's good, but she obviously wasn't doing that. She was arguing straw men. She was misrepresenting him. She was challenging her own projected concept of what his position is, and it really came off as being nefarious in that it seemed like she was intentionally trying to fabricate a villain out of him, trying to paint him into a specific situation or trap him. And I mean, if she weren't doing that, then I would have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever, because that's good journalism. Journalists should be hard on the people that they're interviewing. They should challenge them with the tough questions and explore their positions. But they should do this by doing research on the subject, knowing the subject's positions, and to be argue in good faith, and to be honest and open, and to not try to actually have some kind of political agenda in place.
Or intentionally misrepresent his...
Right, exactly. And that's the political agenda here.
I think part of what's interesting about this interview is, like, I think it speaks to a greater media trend of conflating a figurehead with the culture that follows them. Where
I could see that.
Like, she was, I think, in large part, she was less, like, she brought on Jordan Peterson and was more speaking to some of his more toxic, like, followers, where it's like, well, this is going on and this is being represented. He's like, I don't say that. That's not something I've ever said. This isn't something I've ever done.
Right.
So she's talking to people who are not the people that she brought on, instead of addressing that person about those followers. Right. But the thing is that if she were to address address Jordan Peterson about, like, hey, well, what do you feel about these followers, then I think that's been played out already where there's just easy, plausible deniability there where, all right, well, I don't follow them. I have no idea what people do. Like, I'm not their babysitters. But
Right.
so it's,
well, and
you end up
some legitimacy to that too, though.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. I think that's exactly what happened was I feel like the impression I got was that she presumed him to be a figurehead of a specific movement or a specific group of people, like you're saying, what you're referencing. And this is where I talk about the lack of, it's either a political bias that's kind of clouding a perception, or the lack of research. Because having researched the man myself, I could say that while some of his positions may appeal to these more extremist groups or these other viewpoints, these whatever, that isn't who he is. And I don't know. It's for me, we've got to be cautious of painting people by who claims to like that person. It's like how PewDiePie had his face on a white supremacist website. He didn't know. He's not a supporter of them at all, and yet he was painted as a Nazi sympathizer because of that, among other misrepresented things. That's a good example of media's misrepresenting a situation. But to me, it's very much like saying, hey, I like Coca-Cola, and Nazis say, I like Coca-Cola too. Well, Coca-Cola obviously endorses Nazis. You know, it's...
To be fair, isn't that how Fanta was created? I'm actually serious.
Like, oh my god!
I think she was just too postmodern.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what she was trying to. She was trying to target that her perception of this audience, instead of himself and his positions. And I don't consider that good journalism, no matter how it, what the intention, what the goal, if it was good, well intentioned, or bad intentioned, the delivery, it was very much beneath what I would expect from a major news outlet. And to the best of my knowledge, Channel 4 is a big deal in England, I believe, BBC. I'm not sure.
How much do you honestly expect from news networks now, though? It seems like pretty much all of them are kind of like that. It's like we're talking about what they should be, but they're just not.
Literally.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's definitely a soul searching that is and has to go on in media, though, because I think that's one of the things that's really quickly starting to show is a lot of the more what we would expect or want from journalism, a lot of those practices, Scott doesn't end up making them like necessarily profitable,
soul
but B also
ends up making that they don't have a soul and need to find one.
Well, yeah, I guess there's definitely an aspect of that as well, but you also end up in a situation where
the thing, though.
Yeah,
we just need to do the due diligence. We don't need to find a soul. Just do due diligence. Scott and I mentioned this last night on last night's little stream, was that the problem with people today is they take everything at its word. They don't do due diligence to look anything up, and the people that make the articles at best don't do due diligence, and at worst they intentionally make shit up to engineer.
Absolutely,
because they know other people aren't going to do the work, so they just make shit up, or they read, like how many times have you honestly shared an article just by reading the abstract or the title, and not actually, like, how many times? We do it all the time.
Only from the Babylon Bee.
Mikey,
I'm really anal about journalism. That's like a big deal to me. So I'm kind of a rare example, I think.
Yeah, I also I don't tend to share things very often, so I try to hold up and make sure that, but again, I'm sure, we can make the claims about ourselves and be like, oh, no, I am an exception to this rule, all we want, but it's, either way, it's still the greater trend is, like, look at this headline, holy shit, post, share, everyone spread this as quick as you can.
You know, on the subject of completely making shit up, at a university by my parents' house, I guess not too far from me still, there's a professor, she was some minority ethnicity, I think, and she reported that her car was vandalized, and it had been, but then the investigation later showed that she vandalized her own car. As like, so I'm wondering actually how much this is like a conscious thing, like, and do they think that they're being misleading or manipulative, or do they actually like have such a victim mentality that just this like comes out, I guess.
Well, and I think sort of like science journalism. One of the big problems with science journalism and being a scientist in general recently, from what I've heard, ends up being that it's so much more like any new discovery, any new suggestion ends up getting so much more of a following than any alterations or the follow-ups, or a lot of times even when that discovery is shown to be like, oh wait, no, never mind, this was. So we end up sort of like with journalism, we end up having, it's so much more easily acknowledged for to cover a breaking story than it is for them to end up having the edit to it or the alteration where it's like, oh, never mind, we messed up. Or so you end up having this situation where essentially everyone's just being, trained to have the headline and not read the story, including the follow-ups and the edits and the updates.
Right. Well, it's like the issue with Trump overfeeding the fish, which by itself was actually, not to use the overused term, but it was fake news. It wasn't real news at all. It wasn't reality. It was a misrepresentation by editing a video. And a lot of people believe that. And of course, it came out, oh, wait a second, no, there's more to the video. He was just following, the prime minister. Following his lead and doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. But
he did get 2 scoops of ice cream, though.
but yeah, that people are going to always remember that he overfed the fish. They're not going to remember the clarification that came after the fact. And it's because that little tidbit of information is easy to see, it's easy to digest, it looks good, it works, the video's there, the narrative and the headline fits perfectly with what we're seeing. Unless you have critical thought and you're willing to challenge even your own preferred media sources and friends, then you're going to just buy this stuff, and that's what's going to always be locked into your mind. That's why I say first impressions are the strongest impressions.
Right. Now, Gene, you and I went to school together. Did you ever see when the theater department did Fahrenheit 451?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read you an excerpt from Fahrenheit 451. Anybody read the book?
I have. One of my favorites.
High school.
I actually haven't, surprisingly.
Really?
Really?
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, go die in a fire.
Yeah, so, you can read it, man.
Which actually is topical in this instance.
Yeah.
So the basic premise, right, is that it's this culture that burns books. Books have become illegal in this culture. And so this is a speech that the fire chief makes, because the firemen, they don't put out fires. They actually go places, they start fires, they burn the books and everything. And so the fire chief, he's talking about, keep in mind, Bradbury wrote this, I think, in the 40s, or maybe even the 30s.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I think it was early 50s.
And so this is an excerpt from his speech. And because they had mass, they became simpler. Once books appealed to a few people here, there, everywhere. They could afford to be different. The world was roomy, but then the world got full of eyes and elbows and mouths, double, triple, quadruple population. Films and radios, magazines, books leveled down to a sort of paste-putting norm. Picture it, 19th century man with his horses, dogs, carts, slow motion. Then in the 20th century, speed up your camera. Books cut shorter, condensations, digests, tabloids. Everything boils down to the gag, the snap ending. Classics cut to fit 15-minute radio shows, then cut again to fill a 2-minute book column, winding up at the last as a 10 or 12-line dictionary resume. I exaggerate, of course, the dictionaries were for reference, but many of those whose sole knowledge of Hamlet was a one-page digest in a book that claimed, now at least you can read all the classics, keeps up with your neighbors. Do you see? Out of the nursery into the college, back to the nursery, there's your intellectual pattern for the past 5 centuries or more. Politics, 1 column, 2 sentences, a headline. Then in midair, all vanishes. World man's mind around about so fast under the pumping hands of publishers, exploiters, broadcasters, that the centrifuge flings off all unnecessary time-wasting thought.
I prefer the modern update of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, the one starring Christian Bale. I think they called it Equilibrium.
That's a
Oh my god!
It's sort of a thing. Kind of.
But think about it. Ray Bradbury practically predicted Twitter.
Yeah, he essentially did.
Yeah, and the way it is with everything being so fast, you can throw an article out there or write it that you know is complete bullshit, but it doesn't matter even if people discover that later because you already threw it out there.
Yep.
Which
it's already affected the zeitgeist.
Part of which I think ends up being the sort of a necessity of the freedom of information, where we're now at an age, and they were more slowly approaching it even then, where our access to information is so instantaneous that we have very little, if any, time for processing that information.
Yeah,
and it's unavoidable at this stage. You can't help but be flooded with information. We don't go and see like, oh, I'm going to catch up with this friend today and see how they were doing. We go on Facebook and see like, how are my 100 friends doing today? Okay, there's a sentence from each. Done. Like it's all about
here's
having these tiny snapshots. Yeah. So, I mean, how do we get past? And I think going back to the idea of the echo chamber, that partly ends up being what makes the echo chamber's idea so prevalent today. Is we have these situations where we have to have, like, we're expected to have this unrestricted flow of information that happens at such a quick pace that conflicting with someone and trying to open that debate is essentially putting a plug in what's expected to be an information norm, because it's like, all right, well, now I'm stepping in the way. I'm not allowing this to go by. You can't just look at this and disregard it. You need to process it.
Right,
and
exactly.
It's easier just to be like, I don't have time for that. You need to shoo.
Right, and you don't even if you did process it, you don't have time to challenge everything you encounter. See, I actually drove myself nuts last year trying to do that. Every time I would see a news story in a political group, I would research it every single time, and then I would challenge it. And I found myself like defending Trump. Whom you all know I don't, support. He's not my candidate I voted for or anything like that. But I would find myself defending him and getting frustrated over and over and over again, because by the time I would find out that there was something wrong with an argument, a position, or a narrative that was going on out there, and I tried to correct it, everybody had already moved on. Nobody was interested in hearing it. And for me, I think you do get worn down, you get fatigue, you get information fatigue essentially. So you're gonna just wear down, and you're gonna just take it because it's easier that way. There's also the time and effort it takes to find out for yourself each and every little thing that you encounter, and then there's the helplessness and the uselessness of actually challenging misinformation and things like that. And so I think honestly, I think you're right that we're talking about being in a new age where we have this stuff, but I think that it's also on us to adapt to this new situation, to develop a form of self-awareness or more critical thought, to really bolster our critical thinking skills, and also just to adapt to this new age of information, so that we can process it better, or at least maybe just have a little bit more skepticism, especially when it comes to our own political agendas. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that I see, is that especially when you combine this information age, you combine it with the fact that, you know, a lot of this stuff is going on the internet, and there are a lot of different types of people on the internet with varying degrees of intellects, or, you know, educations and things like that. And then you combine it with the divisiveness of our political structure at the moment, how it seems very, very much just divided, and people are so pulled to either side so firmly that it's like you know, a sports team where you're not even going to care about who's winning or losing. You just care about supporting your team. And I think that you know, if you combine all those things, that's what's creating this culture, and it's on us to fix that.
I'd also add that, you know, you said people weren't interested in hearing it, but at least in those groups, it went beyond that to where, like, people were all out hostile and kind of verbally abusive.
Right. Yeah.
To
absolutely.
the, like, any disagreement even, and that's why most of us left.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the problem. Like I said, we're in a political culture or political climate right now where people are very much just mindlessly supporting their team and seeing the opposing team, like we were talking about. I think it was yesterday we were talking about this, where they see the team as the enemy. They don't see it as, you know, two people with you know, who love their country and just have different ideas of what's best for it. They see one who hates the country and wants to destroy it versus the one that wants to save it and be the hero. And so the vitriol is inevitable.
Yeah, and I really like, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not entirely unexpected, I guess, but the dynamic we now have in this group, because not all of us are really conservative or libertarian. We have a few, you know, more liberal progressives in here. Like, I think Robert left, but he is. But now, like, we've avoided seeing each other as enemies, or it's more like we're more like just friends with different ideas.
Exactly. And I think that's, you know, it's unrealistic, probably a little Pollyanna to think that we could ever achieve that on a widespread level. But I mean, I think we do need more of that.
And weren't so petty, we could absolutely do it on a wide scale level.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think we can't try to apply any top-down approach. Like, it starts with us individuals trying to foster that kind of dynamic.
I agree. It's like a cultural shift.
Want to see in the world.
Yeah.
I guess if we are assholes to the world, we're just gonna get more assholes reflected at us.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to perpetuate an asshole culture. If everybody's assholes, then everybody's just going to be assholes.
I know, and everyone's just butthurt about everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you know, one of my philosophical approaches to this is to avoid extremism just in general. Now, I'm not saying, you know, like middle of the line, you know, like black people should be half slaves and half not. That stupid straw man argument whenever we talk about like not being extreme, people talk about the straw man
or being a centrist in the sense that you don't really take a stance on anything.
Yeah, that to me is a straw man. It's bullshit. I mean, some people take that approach, but I don't think that's not even remotely what I'm talking about. But I am saying is avoid the extremes. So you can say, you know, like you should be okay with people being assholes to a reasonable extent, and you should also be it's also reasonable to get offended by things to a certain extent. We need to find a new balance in how we approach these things. But again, this is kind of a difficult conversation because, like Robert was saying, you know, we're in a new technology, so I think a lot of people aren't used to this internet age where anybody can be assholes or be anything they want. But also, we're going back to what I was saying earlier. There are people who use this to their advantage, who will actually use being a victim to get real money, you know, to do actual like fundraisers, because I was victimized on the internet. Give me money. Here's my new YouTube series.
Wait,
You
maybe
know?
we're doing this all wrong, guys. We need to go out and be victimized.
Well,
And then-
yeah.
Well, we need to have our minority. We need to have our minority victimized. He comes on here. We
Dang it, where'd YL go?
I know, we lost him now. We have zero credibility right now.
Yep.
I like how Michael is muted, but then he talks, so it comes up, but nothing.
Oh, it's because I unmute myself.
His children's shows in the background are just a little too much.
Yeah.
Okay, it depends what he's watching. Is he watching SpongeBob? Because that's fine.
No, it's some kind of Disney crap.
Okay,
You're a
but
Toki
yeah,
Doji.
get the fuck out of here.
Disney Master Race over here.
Devil Man.
Devil Man. Hey, quick question. We kind of had this. I wanted to touch on this because it's the vegans are starting to get uppity on YouTube, and I just kind of maybe. What do we think? What do we think? Let's talk about it. I mean, does anyone here have a background in nutrition, or does anyone here really watch their diet? And can you confirm or deny veganism? I'm not talking ethical vegans because that's a whole other thing. But like,
well, I mean, there's
people who
between...
don't have to. Yeah, people who don't have dietary restrictions voluntarily being vegan.
Yeah, there's a difference between being a vegetarian and being a vegan, and I think that you have to start there because a vegetarian doesn't eat meat, or can also mean doesn't eat animal products. A vegan is like that, only the religion of it, and that they're gonna hate me for this. No, but I mean, just partially in jest. But no, a vegan, as I understand it, is that they don't consume any animal products. That means not wearing leather jackets. That means, you know, not using like.
Yeah. I mean, it means not doing anything that would hurt animals,
right.
except they use
I would bet that none of them
and drive cars and use the internet and do all these things in society. They just think that not eating or wearing animals is enough to not oppress animals, which irritates the fuck out of me, especially when they tell me I'm a bad guy for eating bacon.
I do watch my diet. I decently. I mean, I'm not like huge on it. I'm not really extreme or anything, but I do watch my diet. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. I do like meat. I've heard all kinds of arguments from either side. I definitely don't know enough that I could make any kind of pro or anti argument towards the vegetarian vegan side, or, you know, meat and things like that. But my biggest thing about it is that I found that like the people, vegans are kind of like any other kind of extreme enthusiast group. They tend to be pretty intense when you deal with them. Like I've seen vegans on YouTube that are like straight up violent, like aggressive. That guy Vegan Gains, I think, is one of them. I've seen. Yeah,
he's actually one person. Like when I wanted to ask questions about veganism, I thought to myself, what's the worst that could happen? And I realized, man, if this guy got caught wind of it, like.
Yeah, well, and that doesn't help it though, and that's kind of my point. It's like talking about veganism on YouTube. These kinds of approaches are actually antithetical to them gaining any kind of clout or movement for the people who otherwise aren't informed or just, you know, aren't part of their perspective. But the problem is that for a lot of vegans, it's like war. This is life and death. You know, imagine you were talking about someone who is just like murdering babies and wearing their skin. You know, you take that pretty seriously, and I think that's how a lot of vegans take it. Like they take it that seriously, but I think that's to their detriment because people look at that and say, "Get the fuck out of here! You're insane."
I know. Don't tell me to stop killing babies.
Right.
Whoa. We kill babies and adults in the animal kingdom. We don't just.
Yeah.
We do not discriminate.
Because they're delicious.
I do like what you said though, actually, about there's kind of a religious aspect to it.
Yeah.
With how strongly they hold to that. And I think in a way that's politics in general now. Where like,
yeah, absolutely.
If people, it's like we can't help but adopt some kind of religion in some way, or have that kind of like encompassing worldview. And so people end up latching onto a party or a figure or something as almost kind of a god like entity.
Yeah, well, and it goes back to like yesterday, while I was talking about the how everybody worships at some altar somewhere. You know, they bow their head to something, and I think that it's in the human nature, especially the tribalist element of our nature, to kind of build altars upon our ideology. And I agree. I think that's very much it. And in this age, everything's political, and all politics are religious. For most people, I mean, I'm using this as a faux absolute. I don't take it as an absolute, but you know, using it as a kind of a lens of looking at it. Yeah, I think that's definitely the case.
I agree. I concur.
You know, in a way, like the left is really obnoxious about everything, but in a way, it bothers me a little more when the right does it, because a lot of them are Christian, and it's like Christianity is in no way a bad thing, and I think it has a lot of good potential, but then it kind of gets corrupted when it becomes so enmeshed with politics that like they almost end up making an idol out of the flag. And it's like they're kind of ruining both.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, trading an imaginary god for a real world psychosis. That's the way I look at it. Oh, look, I just tied in one of our topics from the list. Yeah.
Yep.
But you're right. You're right. Not gonna argue with that. It's kind of what I wanted y'all to say, to agree with me. Nice and quiet.
I don't think God is imaginary necessarily. My kind of religious views fluctuate, I guess. Like, I'm not entirely sure what I think about anything, but I just think.
Are you an agnostic theist? Is that what they call it? Agnostic theist?
I guess kind of.
I could talk a lot about that too. The semantics of that.
Yeah, I just think it might not be a topic for right now.
Yeah.
Like a religious discussion maybe should be saved for a different time.
Okay.
Well, my only problem with it is that you know, there's only a few of us that seem to be active at the moment, and that's a conversation that's good when you have, like, you know, more religious people involved. Obviously Scott, I think he's here. He's muted. Haven't heard from him in a bit.
Yeah.
But, I think he's running one out to our voices.
He's definitely religious. There's some other people it would be interesting to get on here, like Saint Cuckold.
I don't know that I want to go there.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
We may as well just have a conversation on Channel 4.
I wouldn't be able to talk because he'd hear the kids in the background, and you know.
I was gonna say, this isn't a discussion for children. We don't have to bring all that in with him.
True.
No, I was listening in. Don't worry, guys. No, my wife's battery died, so I had to go take care of that real quick.
Okay, no worries, no worries. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, we
Did she recharge all right? Did you wind her up again?
He didn't mean in his wife, you idiot. He meant her toys. Her toys battery.
Maybe his wife is the toy. I don't know.
Hey, sex bots are a thing now, man. I'm telling you. That's
the future.
That's the future. This shit is the future, bro.
When did we stop putting 2000 after everything? Like, once we reached 2000, I guess it lost its value. But like the Power Dildo 2000, yeah. now it's 4K. Power Dildo 4K.
Everything's in 4K now. We stopped using 1000 designations.
Yep.
I don't know. 2020 kind of rolls off the tongue. New glasses, 2020.
Oh, Jesus fuck.
Because I can't afford them until
Trump
then.
2020. Yeah, that does have a good ring to it.
I don't know, man. Oprah Fuhrer.
The Oprah Fuhrer, yeah? Frau Oprah Fuhrer, she's coming for you. You get on the train. You get on the train. Everybody gets on the train.
I think she'd be really
That's
big
the
on the
border.
welfare state. You get a handout, and you get a handout.
Everybody gets a handout.
You get free college.
I mean, she does give a lot of things away, which I think if she's the president might be a positive thing. Of course, she'd be black and a woman. So yeah, that's fine. I mean, whatever. I don't give a shit as long as nobody kicks in my door.
I just want to get on her book club. Because that's guaranteed success right there, man. If Oprah says, I recommend this, it's good. But the problem is my book involves like all kinds of bad things. I don't think she'd like it. Too many dick jokes.
You know what? I think that's Oprah's downfall. Not enough dick jokes. I don't think she's reaching a good demographic that needs a strong, independent black woman as in a leadership role.
Have you guys seen the South Park episode with Oprah?
Yes, I was actually just about to bring that up. Like we've missed this opportunity to our president to have been in South Park like that. Is our president taking orders from her vagina?
Or her asshole?
Okay, so I'm serious, guys. You need to watch Black Mirror. All right.
Okay.
I've seen that.
Yeah, actually, I plan on it. I actually was just talking about doing that recently. I haven't had the time yet, though.
You should also watch Big Mouth.
I actually watched that.
It's great for making you really uncomfortable.
It's not really. I'm not super impressed with that show. I mean, just
no, me either.
Call me a little cynical, but
No, on it, like I watched it with my girlfriend, and one episode would be funny, and then the next one would be like, "What the fuck?"
Right. Yeah.
And so, like, we found that it's much better to watch drunk.
Yeah.
If you have to watch a show at a diminished intellectual capacity, is it really worthwhile?
Ouch, my balls.
I don't know. Super Troopers was pretty good.
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, if you're gonna get high and watch, you can watch Super Troopers sober, and it's not that bad. I mean,
Right.
There's some funny jokes in there. You get high, sure, it gets funnier because you're fucking high or drunk or whatever. But like Beer Fest was pretty bad. I mean, there were some good jokes in there, but as a movie as a whole, it was pretty bad. Unless you get shit faced drunk and watch it, right? Because we're drunk. It's a movie about beer. But if I have to seriously fuck up my noggin to watch a show, like,
what about
beer? Alcohol is actually a good analogy for Big Mouth because it's like you have some or too much, probably even that much is too much, and then you hate yourself for doing it. Because you feel like shit after, but yet you're always gonna go back for some reason.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
But you're already there, so you might as well just keep consuming. Imbibe.
Yep.
Imbibe.
I didn't plan on watching the whole season, but we did.
I'll pull something up real quick. You guys, when you get a chance, you should watch this. I don't know if you've seen it, but I Hate Everything YouTube channel covered that, and he did an excellent job, essentially covering exactly my thoughts on what was so bad about it for the most part. Although I think he did miss a couple things. I wasn't huge on the way it tried to handle like SJW topics, social justice topics, things like that. But I don't think that IAG touched on that so much because he probably just doesn't want to get mixed into that crap. But anyway, I just shared the video in the chat. You guys should check it out at some point. It's pretty amazing.
I'm gonna have to take off, guys. I'll talk to you later.
All right, later, broski.
All right, later, man.
Yeah. Have fun with your wife.
Bye, Scott.
Please do not insert.
That doesn't go in that hole. Uh-oh, guys. You guys want Sijan in on this?
Sure.
Sijan Halverstedt.
Oh, I actually have to go myself. I got to get started on the dishes and dinner, like I mentioned earlier. This is about that time, but I can get back on in a little while, probably if you guys are still going late.
Okay, yeah.
If you do another night one later on tonight too, let me know, and maybe I can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
I definitely want to be on the night one.
4C is going to probably hop on a little later.
Cool.
But I guess I'm gonna
Yeah,
see
well,
this.
like I said,
Do
you foresee that being a good thing?
What's that?
what was that?
Do you foresee that being a good thing?
What it being a good thing?
It was a stupid pun. Don't worry about
it. Son of a bitch! I walked right into it.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna pick up later tonight. Let's go ahead and sign off for this one, and we'll see each other. What, a couple hours maybe? Let it like everybody. Somebody the first one done. Start a thread on friggin' in the group, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, once Jack finishes his wifely duties.
Once he's done with his once Jack of all asses is done wifing
with
up
his whiffery.
But I'm gonna go ahead and stop the broadcast, gentlemen.